all of these countries are accumulating gold. What does it mean for silver? And there are some very important things to understand about silver. Number one, first and foremost, China is the number 2 largest producer of silver in the world. And they, for many years, have been a net exporter because they mine all of these other metals. And if you remember, silver is largely a byproduct metal, where in North America, or I guess in all of the mining companies out there, only account for about 25-30% of the silver that comes to market. So China and their smelters had tons of silver for years. They would export it. This year, they have now become shifted from net exporter to net importer. And it's been driven by increased imports and also by rebalancing their domestic market.
China's silver production is expected to grow by 4.1% in 2024, after a period of stagnation. Countries accumulating gold is significant for the silver market, especially because China, the world's second-largest silver producer, has shifted from being a net exporter to a net importer of silver this year. This shift is influenced by increased imports and efforts to rebalance their domestic market. Since silver is often a byproduct of mining other metals, China's changing role could impact the global silver supply and demand. The argument highlights that inflation is primarily caused by an increase in the money supply, not just rising prices. Andy Schectman, the president and owner of Miles Franklin Precious Metals, a firm that deals in physical gold, silver, platinum, and palladium, explains that policies like Kamala Harris's proposals for tax credits and down payment assistance are seen as inflationary because they require creating more money in an already heavily indebted economy. The speaker criticizes Harris for blaming grocery stores for price increases, arguing that the government's fiscal and monetary policies are the real cause of inflation. Rising prices are a symptom of these policies, not the root cause of inflation itself. The issue is not with grocery stores but with rising input costs like fuel, seeds, and fertilizer, much of which comes from Russia. Andy criticizes price caps, comparing them to those imposed on farmers in the 1970s, which led to inefficiencies and food shortages, such as farmers killing baby chicks because it was too costly to raise them under the price controls. He argues that such government interventions distort the market, resembling socialism or communism. Andy Schectman argues that government policies, such as excessive spending and involvement in foreign initiatives, are the real drivers of economic issues, not grocery stores operating on thin margins. Criticizing proposals like price controls, the speaker warns that these could lead to empty grocery shelves and bankrupt grocery chains, as seen in past instances. Instead of addressing the root causes like rampant spending, the government is blamed for misdirecting the problem onto businesses, which is seen as a troubling and ignorant approach. As you watch the video clips, please take a moment to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an upload. We appreciate your support. Enjoy the video.
The folks that think they're trying to fight inflation are only fighting what is the consequence of inflation and rising prices. And when you look at Kamala's platform, she talks about giving a $6,000 tax credit for families with a new child, or $25,000 down payment for 400,000 first-generation home buyers, or $10,000 tax credit for the first-time home buyers. Who pays for all that? We're already $35 trillion broke on top of unfunded liabilities. Where does that money come from? So, in essence, at the same time, she's inflating through policy by creating money to fund these initiatives, and we can't afford them. Then she turns around and blames the problem on the grocery stores for price gouging when it's the government that created the inflation to begin with. And inflation is always, every single time, a monetary event. It's an inflation of the money supply, an increase in the money supply. That is what causes inflation. And when we are creating, in essence, $100,000 a second, 24/7, or $1 trillion every 100 days, well, that's inflation. It's not the cause of the rising prices aren't inflation. And we've been indoctrinated into believing the CPI, the Consumer Price Index, the CPI, from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, take the L out of that, and it just be the BS, is inflation. That's not. Rising prices are a symptom of inflation. It's the irresponsibility, fiscal policy, and brain dead monetary policy of the Fed and of the government that are creating these distortions to begin with. And it just goes to show how uninformed the public is, and certainly how uninformed someone like Kamala Harris is in saying this nonsense. I mean, just looking at it alone, just the cost of farmers to process, package, and deliver their food has gone up 31%. since she's taken office as the vice president, and yet she's blaming it on grocery stores. I used to joke that this industry might be the only industry that makes less than the grocery stores, who make on average 1.5%. They're not the problem. The problem is through all of the inputs that have gone up in cost, fuel and seed and certainly fertilizer, most of which comes from Russia, and all of these input costs have gone up, and blaming it on and then trying to impose capping prices. You go back to the 70s and you read about that, you'll see that farmers had price caps on chicken, and the cost of raising baby chicks to the point where they could then, at a full-grown chicken and slaughter it and bring it to the grocery store, it cost more to do that. So they were drowning baby chicks, killing them, because the cost of raising them to adulthood and then bringing them to, be processed cost more than they were allowed to sell them for. All that does is create empty food shelves and distortions, and people drop out of it. It's communism. It's socialism. Capitalism says a company that can do it more efficiently and do it better, well, they win. And if you can do something more efficient for less money, that is the whole concept of capitalism, bringing value through efficiency, instead of imposing, the government's will, and all that does is distort everything that they trust. It's a bad omen that is a path that she is taking, rather than looking within and saying, geez, spending $100,000 a second 24/7 might be the real problem. Wasting our money all around the globe on initiatives we have no business being part of, or wars we have no business being part of. Well, maybe that's something we should look at, instead blaming the people who are running grocery stores at tiny margins. How about the margins we see on Wall Street? How about the margins we see other places? It's misdirected, and it's ignorant, and it's very troubling to me when you think about what could be if this administration takes power and starts implementing price controls like that. You'll end up with empty grocery stores and grocery store chains going out of business.
There is speculation about BRICS establishing a common currency, but this is unlikely due to sovereignty concerns, especially between countries like China and India. The head of the BRICS New Development Bank has stated there are no immediate plans for a common currency. Instead, BRICS countries are focused on maintaining their own central bank digital currencies, CBDCs, and increasing trade in local currencies, bypassing the dollar and Western banking systems. People holding silver are unlikely to sell it at current Western prices, as they can get higher prices in markets like Shanghai, where silver is already selling for $4 more per ounce. This could lead to a broader revaluation of silver, potentially controlled by countries like China. The speaker Andy Schectman, in a discussion with Dunnigan Kaiser, compares this to discussions in the U.S. about revaluing gold to fund initiatives like a strategic Bitcoin account. They argue that silver remains one of the most undervalued assets despite its recent volatility, partly due to manipulation by Western banks, but that this manipulation will eventually fail, especially as countries like China and India continue to accumulate silver. Global silver production is anticipated to rise by 4% to 843 million ounces, the highest since 2018. Let's dive back into the interview.
People talking about BRICS establishing a common currency, and that these countries would need, of course, then they would need a central bank and presumably be held in China, which is an unacceptable loss of sovereignty, especially between countries like China and India with territorial conflicts. And well, you have the head of the BRICS New Development Bank who made it clear there are no immediate plans to create a common currency, which I agree. And even if they were willing to put aside their differences, it's hard to see what competitive advantage would ever have between to the current system. And then they talk about a gold-backed yuan or all. They're missing, and they always go back to the Eurodollar system, and that we left the gold-backed system to go to the Eurodollar system because it was such a better system. And contrary to what people say, we had gone, I think, 180 years with no inflation and the greatest growth that the world has ever seen in a country by being on the gold-backed system. But I've been reading a lot of this lately, talking about this common fallacy is that there won't be a common currency, and maybe there won't be. And if you look at what they're proposing right now, it is not a common currency. They are proposing everyone having their own central bank digital currency, having their own monetary autonomy. That's number one. And if you look at the global GDP, and go 98% of all the gross domestic product of the world and the countries that represent that, every one of them has a CBDC in operation or development. That's number one. If you look at what's been done over the last year, all of these countries are trading in local currencies. They're trading rupee for ruble digital. They're trading, yuan for oil. And that yuan is convertible into gold on the Shanghai Gold Exchange. And all of these local currency tradings that are being done instead of the dollar is first and foremost. Project Mbridge is a vehicle or a platform to allow these countries to seamlessly trade back and forth with one another without interference of the SWIFT system. And Saudi Arabia just became a full participant in Mbridge. And what they are attempting to do, at least that's what Dilma Rousseff said, the head of the BRICS New Development Bank, former president of Brazil, is that we've agreed in principle to a common settlement currency. It is not a common BRICS currency. This is where people are going astray. They don't have to have a common currency in order for this to work, but a common settlement currency that is pegged 40% to gold and 60% to BRICS plus currencies eliminates the need for a common currency. Each country will have their own system. All of the people who have silver that would otherwise sell it, they're not going to sell it at the Western price. It will be sold at a price far higher and probably a price that is then revalued or controlled by countries like China, who, as it is right now, are selling it for $4 an ounce higher in Shanghai. What if it was $40 or $400? It's the same thing as us talking about revaluing gold, where Senator Loomis for Wyoming can say, yeah, I like Trump's idea of the strategic Bitcoin account. We should do that and fund it partially by revaluing our gold that's held by the Fed. Well, there you go. I mean, it's one thing for the Dutch National Banker, the head of the Dutch National Bank, to say, yeah, we're going to revalue gold because it's in the gold revaluation account and it should go much higher to offset our liabilities. But when you see Senator Loomis from Wyoming saying, yeah, we should do this to fund a strategic Bitcoin account, what's the difference if the West revalues it or China revalues it? In essence, a $4 premium to the Western price already is the beginning of a revaluation. So I would say silver is still the most undervalued, probably best potential asset on the planet, regardless of how maddening it has been for the past few years in terms of its counterintuitive price movement and its volatility. If there weren't, and I'll keep going back to the chart Ed Steer put on your show, It's incredible. People understand that there are 8 banks that are holding the largest concentrated position of any commodity ever traded on COMEX in silver. Why? And it's because those 8 banks are being instructed by the people above in the West to keep it down for a reason. And maybe it is to fund the military-industrial complex. Who knows? Point of it is that all manipulations end badly, especially when you see massive efforts by countries like China and India to accumulate everything that's not nailed down, and even do so in a clandestine manner by buying doré and concentrate from the miners that doesn't come off of an exchange, that isn't reflected in the price, so that they can have a strategic advantage that no one sees coming.
Global economic shifts, including China's accumulation of gold and silver, signal potential challenges to traditional financial systems. Rising costs and currency revaluations may further shift economic power away from the West as countries explore alternatives like central bank digital currencies. Do you agree with Andy's predictions? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this content, be sure to subscribe, turn on notifications, and check out our other videos. Thanks for watching.